Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the little drama that happens inside your head every single day. We're going to meet the two characters who are basically running the show up there, all based on the Nobel Prize-winning work of the amazing psychologist Daniel Kahneman.
All right, let's jump right in with a quick puzzle. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs exactly $1 more than the ball. So how much does the ball cost? Now, for most of us, the number 10 cents just pops into our heads. It feels right, it's fast, it's intuitive, and, you guessed it, it's wrong. But hold on, if you actually take a second to do the math, if the ball was 10 cents, the bat would be $1.10, and that adds up to $1.20. The correct answer is actually 5 cents. That first, automatic, and totally wrong impulse, well, that's exactly what we're here to talk about.
So to understand that little mistake our brain just made, we need to meet the two main characters in our mental story. These are the two systems that drive the way we think. Kahneman gave them pretty simple names. System 1, the fast, intuitive thinker, and System 2, the slow, more deliberate one.
Okay, meet System 1. You can think of it as the impulsive hero of our story, or at least it definitely thinks it's the hero. This is the secret author of most of our choices and judgments. It works totally automatically, handling things like recognizing your friend's face in a crowd, finishing the phrase peanut butter, or just getting an instant bad vibe from someone. It's your gut reaction, and it is running on complete autopilot 24/7.
And then there's the supporting character, System 2. If System 1 is your gut, System 2 is your conscious, reasoning self. It's that voice in your head that you identify as you. This is the part that handles the hard stuff, like calculating a 20% tip or trying to follow the logic of a complicated argument. But here's the thing you have to know about System 2. It is lazy. And honestly, for a good reason. Thinking hard burns a ton of calories. So it prefers to stay on the sidelines unless something gets really tough, or it's specifically called on to do some of that mental heavy lifting.
So what's the working relationship here? Well, think of it like this. System 1 is constantly generating suggestions for System 2. It's serving up impressions, intuitions, intentions, and feelings all day long. And because System 2 is just inherently lazy, it usually just takes these suggestions and says, yep, looks good to me, without second thought. It's a super efficient partnership for the most part, but it's also where all our trouble begins.
See, the problem is our so-called hero, System 1, is built for speed, not for accuracy. And to be that fast, it relies on mental shortcuts, or what psychologists call heuristics. And while these shortcuts are useful, they can also lead to predictable, systematic errors in judgment. We have a name for these predictable errors: cognitive biases.
So how exactly does it mess up? Well, one of its favorite shortcuts is something called the availability heuristic. The rule of thumb here is really simple. If you can think of examples of something easily, you assume it must be super common or really important. It's a mental swap where the ease of remembering something stands in for how often it actually happens. Just take this example. You see a plane crash plastered all over the news. The images are vivid, emotional, and everywhere. That makes the event incredibly available in your mind. All of a sudden, flying feels way riskier, even though the statistical reality of flight safety hasn't changed one single bit. Our feelings, which are driven by System 1, completely overpower the facts that our lazy System 2 would have to actually go and look up. And the availability shortcut is just the beginning. System 1's main goal is to create a simple, believable story out of whatever information is right in front of it. Kahneman calls this "what you see is all there is," or YSATI. This one tendency leads to a whole bunch of predictable biases, like the halo effect. That's when our first impression of one thing, like how attractive someone is, spills over and colors our judgment of their other qualities, like how smart we think they are. But perhaps the most powerful and sneakiest trick that System 1 has up its sleeve is something Kahneman calls substitution. When it's faced with a genuinely difficult question, it secretly, and I mean secretly, swaps it out for a much simpler one.
Okay, just imagine a financial manager looking at this question. To answer it properly requires a ton of complex analysis. You've got to look at market trends, financial statements, the competition. This is hard work. This is a true System 2 job. System 1 takes one look at that question and basically says, no thanks, way too hard. So without the manager even realizing what's happening inside his own head, it performs a swap. It substitutes that really hard question for an easier one that it can answer in a flash.
The question gets swapped to this: do I like Ford cars? And the manager's brain answers that instead. In the story Kahneman tells, this manager had just been to a car show, he loved the new models, and he just felt great about Ford as a company. That positive feeling became the answer to the super complex financial question. And get this, he invested tens of millions of dollars based on it.
And that right there is the very heart of so many of our intuitive mistakes. We're not actually solving the complex problem we're facing. We're answering a related but much simpler one with a gut feeling, and we completely trick ourselves into believing we've actually tackled the original, difficult question. It's a mental bait and switch.
So, this all sounds a bit grim, right? How in the world do we fight back against these automatic errors? Well, the only solution is to wake up that lazy controller. We have to deliberately engage System 2 and basically force it to get off the couch and do its job. So the process for catching these errors is, in theory, pretty simple. First, you have to recognize when you're walking into a cognitive minefield, a high-stakes decision where your biases are just waiting to trip you up. Second, just slow down. Seriously. Resist that instant gut answer that pops into your head. And finally, you have to actively engage System 2 by asking some tough questions. Questions like, what question am I really answering here? And what crucial information am I missing from this simple story my brain wants to believe?
Okay, so let's bring this all into the real world. Understanding this whole mental dynamic isn't just some fun academic exercise. It is absolutely critical for making better, smarter decisions in our actual lives and our work.
And this is where the rubber really meets the road. In these kinds of high-stakes situations, we just cannot afford to rely on our gut feelings. Whether you're making a big investment, hiring a new employee, or even just assessing a risk, you have to know when to tell System 1 to take a break. You have to engage the deliberate, analytical tools of System 2 to prevent some really costly mistakes.
Ultimately, the biggest takeaway from all of this is just awareness. Our intuition is so much more powerful than we realize, and it's the secret author of so many of our choices. The biggest challenge of all, as Kahneman says here, is that we're not only blind to these automatic processes, but we're also blind to our own blindness. Just knowing that these two systems exist is the first and, honestly, the most important step toward better thinking.
So as we close out, I want to leave you with this question. Think back on an important decision you made recently. Was it really the product of careful, slow analysis? Or was it actually the answer to an easier, substituted question that your gut served up? Just reflecting on that for a minute, it might just change how you approach your next big choice.